All right, it's time to talk about SEC Media Days and, of course, reports now that we're hearing that both Texas and Oklahoma perhaps in talks with the SEC to join the conference and leave the Big 12. And we've got our Dennis Dodd and Doug Bell joining us here on CBS Sports HQ from Hoover, Alabama. Dennis, I'll start with you. What more can you tell us about what we're hearing with Oklahoma and Texas reaching out to the SEC?
Yeah, Tommy, sources are telling me that right now this is being driven by Texas. That doesn't mean that Oklahoma is not involved, but there's a regents chair at Texas who was pushing this basically because they got skittish about conference realignment with the new college football playoff. It's basically what happened 10 years ago, and it always involves money. So right now it's all up in the air. I have been able to determine there is no agenda item, there is no conference call at this moment in either the Big 12 or the SEC today. I think everybody's kind of scrambling after the news dropped yesterday by the Houston Chronicle that those two schools have reached out, quote unquote, to the SEC. Now, something to consider, there's a lot to consider actually. Texas apparently is willing to give up half the back end of its Longhorn network contract. That's what kept them out of the Pac-12 10 years ago. We're talking about upwards of $150 million, if that's true. That also tells me that Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC is worth a lot more money than anybody can imagine. I wrote today that it's probably in the $60 million per team range if you combine the new rights fees and the new money from the college football playoff. But Doug, it's all up in the air. The other thing I was going to mention, it's either going to happen in 2 weeks, but we don't know what's going to happen in 2 weeks. Are OU and Texas going to say we're leaving in 4 years, or we're leaving for 2022?
I've been covering SEC Media Days for a long time, and yesterday was one of the most fun days I've ever had at this event, watching Dennis Dodd run all over the lobby and talk to contacts and try to get information was incredible. And oh, by the way, I live here. I've been covering Alabama and Auburn sports for a long, long time. Talk to my friends at Alabama who said, bring them on. Let's bring on Texas and Oklahoma. The more the merrier. As for Auburn, they were excited too about the possibility because they feel if Texas and Oklahoma come into the league, they would move to the Eastern Division, which they've been wanting to do for a long, long time. So it is interesting. And my Alabama contact also told me, listen, it's not just an SEC thing. The Big Ten and Pac-12 could also be involved because those are two crown jewels, Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah, they would have to respond. The ACC, Pac-12, and Big Ten would have to respond, it being then essentially a Power 4 instead of a Power 5. I think the Big 12 as a conference would be scuttled at that point. But what are the teams out there that match Texas and Oklahoma? They're not. So they just got to add members at that point and try to stay even with the SEC, who, if this happens, would become college athletics. Forget about it just means more being the most powerful conference. They'd have the biggest, best, and most powerful brands in the sport.
Dennis, let me throw it back to you for a quick follow-up because you guys have alluded to many things, including the hurdles, the buyouts, the opt-outs, all those things. But it comes down to it seemingly that Texas, more so than Oklahoma, that they want out. So whether it's the SEC or a different conference, it seems to be happening now. If you're the Big 12, Bob Bowlesby and company, what are you thinking right now? What do you think they're doing in the next 24 hours or so?
Well, they're scrambling and trying to talk Oklahoma and Texas back off the ledge. You know, if this happens, there's going to be a huge legal fight because Texas and Oklahoma would break what is called a grant of rights. That binds a conference together basically in that what the contract says is if a team or teams leave early, then the conference owns those television rights. I suspect that Oklahoma and Texas have thought that through, that they're willing to wage a legal battle and basically bleed the Big 12 out in money. I mean, if Texas is willing to leave $150 million on the table, they've already thought through the legal battle they would make to try to get out early. But that's not saying they would try to get out early. They may wait 4 years. That's going to be one contentious 4 years, though, if that happens.
Well, the Big 12 is teetering. There's no question about it. I worked in the Big 12 for close to 20 years calling college basketball. I was there when Nebraska left and Colorado left and Missouri came to the Southeastern Conference. I was there when they flirted with South Florida and Central Florida. Remember, those negotiations were very serious. But if Oklahoma and Texas should leave, it would be the end of the Big 12 Conference. There's no doubt about it. And remember, Texas used to be the bell cow. Now Oklahoma is on equal footing with Texas. There's no question about it. So these two crown jewels, if they should leave, it would be big-time trouble for the Big 12.
That Big 12 TV deal ends in 2025.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.